I am a little bit of a fraud. I feel like a little bit of a fraud being here. What Steve was saying earlier about people writing books and having books. I do not have any books. I don't have any, don't have any planned. I'm a musician. They like books, but easier. And also, I'm not a huge reader either. I've got a really bad habit of giving up books that I find a little bit tricky or aren't really gelling with me. Absalom, I read at uni and got about 300 pages through that. It's a William Faulkner book that everyone says is his best. Couldn't do it. The Crying Lot of 49, which is Thomas Pynchon book, which isn't actually that long. I think it's about 200 pages. That's like amazing. What was going on there? Infinite Jest, aforementioned. I got to page 300. Stop reading the footnotes after 150. You don't need them. I don't think you need them. So it may surprise you to learn, or it won't, because you've read the blurb to this event that I spent the last sort of 4 months every Tuesday reading in a Finnegan's Wake reading group. Some of them here tonight shout out to Finnegan's Woke. To try and sort of decipher what was going on in James Joyce's famously dense and maddening tome, despite having never read any Joyce before, or not really being sure what modernism is. I'm still not properly sure what modernism is. Anyway, so what I'm going to try and do is articulate, one, why doing something like that is a good idea, and I think it is a good idea, I'm sure you'll do it. Two, why it's fun reading books with other people, that's also fun, never done that before. And three, why you should really ignore people who tell you that certain books are too difficult or too hard or too long or whatnot. So the reason I started doing said Finnegan's Wake reading group was basically a bit of a New Year's resolution. So last year, I'm a musician, and last year I was touring for a lot of the first part of the year, and the second part of the year a friend of mine got ill, so I was doing a lot of that stuff, and so there wasn't a lot of time to do anything social that wasn't framed through the lens of either being at a gig or going to a hospital. So I kind of thought, ooh, January, I'll do something that makes me sort of go to the pub every Tuesday. And a journalist I follow, Steph over there, was trying to get people together to join the Finnegan's Wake reading group. I don't know why, but it seemed like a good, fun thing to do and a reason to go to the pub. Now, the first week I did feel sort of incredibly out of my depth, like almost immediately, really. The thing about reading Finnegan's Wake is it's sort of like solving a cryptic crossword puzzle with a lot of people. So you're kind of opening it up, and there's a lot of silence. Not necessarily awkward silence, but the silence of people sort of looking into this thing and trying to figure out what's going on. I'm shit at cryptic crosswords. I'm not good at regular crosswords. The cryptic crosswords are just, not really my thing. But it's not. Whoa. It's a thunder words. It's not dull. Big laugh from that table there. It's not dull, it's not slow. Like, slow books are slow because there's nothing going on. Finnegan's Wake isn't dull or isn't slow, and it's not like it's not sort of wading through treacle. It's more like sort of walking through very tall grass where there's stuff covering the floor, and there's lots of stuff in front of you that you think is going to jump out kind of at any point, and also like a massive sort of storm above you that could rain or could break, and you kind of have to be alert. I think that's the one thing sort of I would say is you kind of have to sort of be willing to recognise when something is going to could happen at any point. The other thing you learn sort of quickly if you do something like this is to play to your strengths. I'm going to turn the page now, my strength wasn't learning this. I'm going to name some people now. I was going to give them all code names, but there's sort of two main groups you could code name like something like this after. One would be the Wu-Tang Clan, or the other would be the Anthill Mob, and I don't know what any of the names of the people in the Anthill Mob are. Also, they're all men. That seemed unfair to our ideal leader. Who did we have in the group? So we had Connor over there, expert in politics, everything political. Two Irish people who are not here, Niamh and Larry, they had Irish history sort of covered. We had a poetry expert in Alex, we had Neil, who's an expert in pretty much everything. And then we had Steph, aforementioned, who's an expert on modernism, and James Joyce, which is something of an unfair advantage, I think. I tried to chip in where I could with things that I knew about, namely recognising when Joyce slipped in a Welsh word, not often enough. When he made a passing reference to a folk song, not often enough. And when he mentioned a good river, loads of good rivers in the Wake, starts off with a river. Favourite river in the Wake, probably the Susquehanna, because it's the most fun to say. And if you get nothing else out of Finnegan's Wake, you will find a lot of fun words to say. And if by this point in the event you are thinking, oh, maybe I'll join a Finnegan's Wake reading group, I'll let you know that knowledge of the Wasteland, Tristan and Isolde, the Futurist Manifesto, and any Scandinavian language wouldn't go against your degree. So the main thing I knew about Finnegan's Wake going into it was that it was written in a very weird language. And I knew this because when my brother was at university, he rang me up one day and was like, Harry, can you get me a chapter? Can you get me a passage from Finnegan's Wake? Just send me one. And I was like, well, one, I was a bit annoyed because it seemed like I was doing his work for him. And two, I was like, well, what passage? And he was like, well, anyone. And I was like, well, I don't understand. He was like, you'll know. So I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's all gibberish, fine. So having read it, I probably don't think he did very well on that essay. So that it was going to be written in this weird language. That's all I really knew. And so my main worry was that I just wasn't going to be able to understand what was going on. I wouldn't be able to decipher any plot from it. I just wouldn't know which characters were talking at any one point. All the kind of basic things you're taught when you are taught to read, I didn't think I would get. But even that in a group is sort of far more decipherable than you think, because it is sort of mostly, when you break it down, puns, portmanteaus, tautologies, foreign words, or cock jokes. Even the thunder words, and the thunder words sort of are long kind of streams of letters that kind of look like someone's kind of on a keyboard. There's even some meat to them. Not a pun on cock jokes. It's all there if you look for it. And what's really brilliant about it is, even though you kind of might read through sort of 1 or 2 or 3 pages, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, and not really know anything that's going on, eventually you will find kind of one thing that resonates with you, and it'll kind of light up something in your head, and that's genuinely incredibly rewarding. And it's also incredibly rewarding when someone else does that in a group, because it kind of feels like you're all kind of mining in this pit, and you find like a little nugget of gold, and that kind of opens up another avenue in the book, almost, I don't know, like a puzzle or a game or something. And I imagine kind of the feeling of doing it together, it's a little bit like a support group. Except, you know, you don't really talk about your problems, you just talk about, like, what did this mean this week? I've got to say, also, finishing the book, because we have finished now, we finished last week. Finishing the book is genuinely one of the most emotional responses I've ever had to a piece of art of any sort. Not just kind of the sense of achievement in actually getting through the 600 pages or whatever, and the fact that kind of, you know, we all started, and I think there were probably about a core sort of 12-ish people who were kind of there pretty much every week. But the writing is really, really beautiful, and this, I always come back to, Stuart Lee talks about this thing about talking about jazz and free jazz, and he talks about how if you listen to the nonsense bits, it sounds like nonsense, but then you hear that person go through a phrase that makes you tap your feet, and it's the bits that you recognise as being poppy, or the bits that you kind of hit you on a more kind of instinctive level that make you realise that all the crazy bits are actually, there's thought gone into that as well. There are bits in Finnegan's Wake, and I would imagine more Joyce if I explored further, that are like someone moving up through the gears. They are poetry, they are incredibly rhythmic and really mellifluous and beautiful. And the ending is maybe the most beautiful part of that. If we go back to the sort of rivers, I imagine most people kind of aware of the opening lines, the only sort of bit, or we river run past Even Adams from Swerve Shore to Bend of Bay, and you have that image of the river that kind of goes through, and then at the end it kind of sort of opens up to a sea, and obviously the end of a river is the beginning of something else, and it never really ends, and so the sort of the ending kind of echoes that by kind of rushing and stopping and starting and then it kind of just it's just great. It's just really, really nice. I think what I'm going to finish on, going back to what I said at the start, is I think people don't want you to read these books, really. Certain people don't want you to read things like Finnegan's Wake or Moby Dick or the classics, you know, because they want to preserve it for like an intelligentsia. Or, what I should say is, they want to make you think that you won't get it. They want to make you think that it is indecipherable, or it is kind of, you need to be incredibly smart or incredibly anything to get anything out of this. Fuck them, basically, because for the most part, books aren't difficult at all. Really, they're just long. Books are really long. They take a long time, and like they're longer than a poem, they're longer than a film, they're longer than a play, but they aren't really difficult. And if you aren't getting through it, it is either because the writing's bad, or it's because you need someone to kind of help you over a bit. And the thing with this book is that as well as it being tricky at points, but there are also really immediate joys that you get with it, from those kind of moments of fluid writing, from those kind of little things, little nuggets that you get from seeing your name written in the text, which happened to I think all of us at one point, even Harris, which I was very pleased about. Connor's second name is Pope, so that really, again, that came up quite a few times I think. And it will sort of, these joys will kind of unravel themselves for kind of days, weeks, sort of months after. So I would say if you haven't read it and have kind of thought like you wanted to, find people who kind of are keen, and get together and sort of in a pub, and that's what we did anyway. It was good, drank Guinness, and do it, because you'll probably want to do it again at the end of it. Thank you.